All right, welcome back. We are INFR3110. That's Game Engine Design and Implementation in the fall 2020 semester at Ontario Tech University, and it's week 11, part 1 of our broadcast. Probably the only part this time around, which is visual programming languages. But I want to talk about a couple things before we get there. So let's see where we are. We're sitting at week 11, and we've done. This week was you played around with shader graph and visual effects graph during your individual assignment 2. If I'm not wrong, group assignment 2 part 3 is due I think it's this weekend. Let me just check to see if that's true. I'm pretty sure it is. And next week what we have is our last time together. So today's the last official lecture. Next week is all on presentations. So the way the presentations is going to work is we're not going to do it through Discord next week. We're actually going to present live. There is going to be a presentation Dropbox where I'm going to get you guys to submit your presentation and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be the final kind of assignment for the semester where you kind of hand stuff in. You're going to hand in your project and everything else. All that is going to be due pretty much at the end of next week. So that is what's happening next week. There is no formal lecture, but we will get together and we'll go through your presentation, and I'm hoping to give you your marks as well, as much as possible by then. If there's anything else, we can at least an indicator of where you guys are at. All right, so that is our plan. So we've come to the end pretty much of our time together, and let's talk about the plan from last week. So last week we really talked about your project checkpoint 3. We talked about gameplay systems and procedural world generation. Some of you took up the challenge and got it done. We also did an in-class exercise number 6. Today there will be no in-class exercise, so I'm not gonna challenge you like that this week, because I know you got a lot going on now. This week you did individual assignment 2, which is completed. I'm going to talk about final exam options right now. And then afterwards, we're going to go into rapid application development, LowCode, NoCode, and visual programming languages, which is some of my favorite topics coming forward. All right. She's going to be late. No problem. That's okay. All right, so this is where we're going. Let's talk about the exam. So this is what people have been waiting for. I talked about this during our little get-together on Wednesday when Nick wasn't feeling so good. And I wanted to offer you a couple of parts. Okay, so this is the way it's going to go. Now, I ran this by Dr. Hogue. He's cool with it. So, because he's the program coordinator, I wanted to make sure that he was okay in the way that I'm going to present it to you. So here's part 1. 2-part exam. You do it. There's a theory test coming up on the week of December 7th to the 11th. I kind of released the theory test. It's going to be probably true, false, multiple choice, as well as some short answers and some challenges. That'll be about 1 hour, in that range. Okay? And then you'll do part 2, which is a practical test. It's also in the week of December 14th to 18th. That's the next week. So I'll give you a week between those two things so you don't have to stress out. That's part of what this is. Officially, we're supposed to have our exam during the week of December 14th to 18th on the 15th of December. And that's when I'll be around for office hours during that time. So if you need me for anything else, I will appear during that time, and you can join me for office hours. But for the most part, I'm not going to host the exam during our exam period. It'll be done during the entire week, so you'll have lots of time to do what you have to do. The total estimated time for the practical piece for the exam is 2 hours. That's approximately what it's going to take. All right, and again, I say estimated time because some people will take longer, some people will take a lot shorter time, some people will spread it out, that kind of stuff. So if you do option 1, the risks are your mark may end up lower than it is right now. There's a lot of people who are doing very well in the course. I would say above 80%, which is good. And chances are with those two things, it might drive your mark down a little bit. Why? I'm going to require things like videos for your part 2. Plus, you're going to have to dedicate at least 2 hours. I'm saying estimated time means if you're really good, you'll finish. If it might take you longer, and so on. Rewards. The mark, your mark may up going up. If you're not doing so good, there's a chance that you can you do much better. Will the office hours be at the usual class time? Well, that's on the Friday, and I believe during that week, like the last week of semester, or the exam week, I can make myself available during that week, but I'm not sure if you might have a clashing time frame. If you do, then you won't be able to meet with me. So, but certainly I can meet with you throughout those 2 weeks, because it's exam weeks. I want to make sure that you guys are there. I can give you feedback individually. We can have a conversation. We can have a coffee, whatever you want. But yeah, Roderick, typically the office hours are supposed to be during your exam time. However, let's see how it goes, and we'll talk about this as well. So this is like option one. Option one is there's risks and rewards. Oh yeah, you should have that's why I said, by next week you'll have an idea of where you stand. I'm going to put together your grades as much as possible, and so on, so that way you have an idea of what's happening. And I mean, you have your marks already. So for most of the stuff you should have your marks. So I think you have there should be a good indicator of where you are right now anyway. If you actually, the TA's done a great job of keeping most of it up to date. There's some stuff still outstanding, but I think you should have a good idea of where you are marks wise already right now. So that's pretty good. All right, so option two, no exam. So you decide that you're doing really, really well, and maybe you're bogged down with other exams or other things, and you don't feel like doing the exam. There's stress involved in doing this part. There's no stress in doing this part. However, I have to mention a couple of risks and rewards on this one too. So first of all, no exam, your final mark, whatever it is, your final exam mark is going to equal to your final mark without the exam, which is equal to really your final mark in the course. So whatever you have in the course by whatever I report to you December 4th is the mark that you're going to have pretty much at the end. That's the mark you're going to end up with, approximately. Plus or minus, there's still some stuff I've got to hold back. Usually we hold back a portion of your mark. So that's something that we normally do. And then let's talk about risk and reward. If you have a low mark, then you'll end up with a low mark at the end. So that's the risk, right? So if you don't want to do the exam because of stress, but you have a low mark, then, well, you're still going to have a low mark at the end, all right? Rewards, if you have a low, kind of a bad mark, and as an example, you do the exam, it could lift you up, and you can have a better mark. And if you have a good mark now, well, you'll end up with the same good mark at the end if you don't do the exam, right? If you don't do the exam, at the end of the day, it won't affect you, because a lot of times if you go into the exam, I'll tell you right now, and this is why I put more likely and less likely. If you go to the exam with a good mark, let's say you go to the exam with an 85% or something like that, well, it's less likely that you're going to bump up much higher than that. It's more likely that you're probably going to drop a little bit, right? So again, what I'm trying to figure out for you guys, what is, and I'll put it up there just like this to you, what is better for you, right? And so now, just to get a sense of that, does anyone have any thoughts? Is anyone against option 2? If you are, check marks. If you're against option 2, which means you're against not doing an exam. It's okay if you're against it, or if you intend to do it. I know there's a lot of people that aren't, but I want you all to consider carefully, right? Because at the end of the day, when I was talking to Dr. Hogue, I want to make sure there's two things here. This is offered to everyone equally. Doesn't matter what your mark. If you're getting a 50% in the course, and you're going to pass, and you don't feel like doing your exam, and you don't feel like putting any more effort in, don't do the exam. Choose option 1, right? If you don't, choose option 2. If you don't say anything by the 4th, by next week, and I'll put together a little survey and all that kind of stuff. I'll post the survey during the class time next week where you'll answer as an example. And if I don't get a response from you, then you're doing the exam. That's the option. So I'm going to err on you're doing option 1, okay? And if I don't get a response from you. And however, as an example, what if, you decide to not write the exam, or write the exam, you choose an option, and then the next day on Saturday or whatever, you have buyer's remorse, and you're like, man, you know what? I don't feel like doing the exam. Or, you know what? I really do feel like doing the exam. I feel like challenging myself. There might be something interesting that I might learn or whatever. I want to do it, right? Well, that's the challenge, you see. So it's not because I don't want you to change. It's just that I got a plan, right? So I got to plan how many people are on it, because if I have less people in the exam, I'm going to make it more customized for each person. If I have more people in the exam, that's also going to change the way I do the exam, right? So just letting you know. Am I going to make it challenging? Because that's what the other questions that you're probably going to ask. Well, let me tell you what the exam is going to cover. So more or less, because this is kind of a review anyway, review day today. The theory part is going to cover everything that we've done so far from the midterm. So all the theory, everything that's been covered, it's going to be on there. There's going to be some part, whether it's a true, false, or multiple choice question, or a short answer and or a problem solving question that's going to be on. I'm not trying to make it hard. I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen from the midterm, which was week 5, all the way to today. So anything it's all inclusive and it's all fair game, kind of thing. On the practical side, I'm probably going to get you to build something with Unity, right? That's going to happen. You can expect that there's probably going to be something to do with what we talked about already. We've given you some examples of stuff that I've wanted you to do. So anything that we've practiced on, so a design pattern, guaranteed. Is there going to be a system? Maybe some procedural generation, who knows? And who knows about some kind of special effect? Because we've given you all those examples, right? So there's going to be some stuff to kind of put out for these two things. Will it be fun? It could be. The practical piece. Will the theory test be fun? Meh. Theory tests are never fun, right? In my opinion. But there's stuff to learn? Absolutely. There's always things to learn from doing a test. And when I put together tests, I generally want you guys to learn stuff, right? It's not just about evaluation. That's the way I do it. So that's the thinking behind this part, right? So that's what is it going to be tough is going to be or not. And by the way, I'm okay with either option, whatever you decide. Either way, I'm dedicated to doing option 1. I'm going to still put the exam together. I'm still going to put both pieces on, because at the end of the day, there might be somebody who would like to do it. I'm guaranteeing you there's going to be people on both sides of the fence here, right? Because, now how many are going to do this and how many are going to do that, I couldn't tell you right now, right? So, again, one more time. Is there anyone, here's another question that's better. Is there anyone that wants to do the exam? How about a check mark for people who want to do it? In the participants panel, please. Maybe I should say it again. Anyone? I'm getting an X. I got one person who wants to do the exam. Hold on a second. I got one person. Okay, Roderick. Yay, Roderick. You're a trooper, buddy. I love you, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I think that. Okay, here's it. I want option 2, but maybe do option 1, part 2 as a challenge. Sure. Yeah. Oh, someone else wants that too. Check mark was to want the exam. Yeah, the check mark is to want the exam. There's one check mark. Roderick wants to do the exam. And X says he doesn't really want the exam, but he doesn't want to do the theory part, but he wants to do the challenge. All right, that's what Jason is saying. Okay, and that's another thing. Here's another one that I came up with. What if? I'm just putting. We're gonna put kind of talk about the elephant in the room. We'll say this, right? What if you decide to take the exam and you do terribly, and then you're like, Tom, can you please just take my mark from my final thing? Will I be able to do that at that point? Well, the answer is probably not. Only because and I don't want to be mean or whatever, but then there's got to be some kind of structure to things, and unfortunately, if you've made that choice, I've got to allocate resources and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I would say that if you decide to take the exam, then whatever your mark is going to be what it is, right? So so again, I don't want you to tell me now. I don't think that I don't want you to decide. I will do a survey. You don't have to tell me now either, because I don't want you to feel pressured or to feel peer pressure on a call. Maybe you feel like doing the exam because that's you. You like, the full evaluation. You want to get the full feeling of being in the course and all that stuff and get the most out of it. That's fine too. and I'm perfectly fine with that. And you don't want to say it because you feel it's private. It's your choice how you want to do your course. That's fine, and that's why I'm going to do a survey, right? So that way it'll give you a chance privately to let me know whether or not you feel like doing it or not. Okay, so the option will be open to everybody until next week Friday. Again, if you do not opt either way, right? If you don't answer the survey or you forget, you're doing the exam. That's how it's going to be. All right, just letting you know. So if you don't feel like doing anything, so there's no action required. If you take no action by next week Friday, you're writing the exam. Okay, are we clear? Cool. All right, so that is that. And speaking of surveys, I know that there is the student survey that's out there for you. Please, if you haven't had a chance to do that already, I think it's a good chance for you guys to give feedback to myself and Nicholas and all that kind of stuff. So please take a moment, if you haven't had a chance to already, to respond. All right, so it's a great opportunity for you to also give response and feedback for the course, things that you'd like to see different, and all that kind of stuff. And I think future iterations of this course can only improve with your feedback. That's really, really important. So that's part of the reason why I'm going to keep this lecture short, to give you a chance to answer the survey and give you back some time. That's my thing for you. And I want to make sure, again, just as a priority perspective for me, I want you to feel that you always have options. You have options on how you do your learning, and you're going to have options on kind of what you're doing in the future. So again, what I'm probably going to do, Mustafa, is I'm probably going to open up a survey probably next week sometime. It'll close by Friday, right, of next week. So you'll have a bit of time next week. I'll put an announcement out there with a survey. Chances are it'll be like a Google survey that I'll put out there, and then you'll have a chance to answer and all that kind of stuff. So that's my own personal survey of, do you want to take the exam, yes or no? You'll put in your you'll put in your student ID and your email address and all that kind of stuff. And you'll also say something, there'll be some kind of disclaimer that'll say, I agree that my choices, whatever I've decided, something or another, are the choice that I'm going to go through for the exam. And I agree that, this is the option that I've chosen personally. It's the best option for me. One of those kind of things. So there'll be a bit of a disclaimer on there too, just to make sure that, you've decided either way. And again, if you don't answer, it's not mandatory because you're doing the exam. If you don't answer, that's pretty much how it is. All right, and I'll go through that again. I'll put an announcement out, and I'll put that all in very clear details on the announcement, so that way, there's no confusion. Also, it'll remind you if you forget, that kind of thing. Will we be able to see our current mark overall before deciding? Yep, and your current marks will be, like I said, I'll try and post them to you as quickly as possible. Basically what it is whatever you see as your marks now, whatever you have is a good indicator, a trend of where you're going to be. Because obviously, to make a decision, you need to know where you are. So I'm going to post something or another as early as next week, so you'll be able to make that decision. But I want you to, because this way you'll understand too how you're feeling, and do you want to go forward or not. And that'll include things like your bonus marks for doing the in-class exercises, as well as your checkpoints. Those are all bonus marks for the team, as well as bonus marks for you. And even though it doesn't include it might not be a lot, as an example, every little bit helps in terms of boosting your markup, right? So and if you've participated in everything else, you're going to see a good result. Yeah, so again, you'll have to decide as how things are going to go. Don't feel terrible about it. I think either way, when we think about what the exam is going to be worth, again, I'll give you all those details in the announcement, as well as I will try and post your where you are from a marking perspective as soon as possible, because I want you to understand. I want you guys to have options. Again, that's the idea behind it, right? I don't want you to feel like you're kind of up in the air. You don't know what you want to do. So it's not supposed to confuse you, it's supposed to help you. That's the intent. Okay. All right, let's go to the next phase. If any other questions around the exam, any kind of thoughts, you can come on the mic too before I move on, because I want to kind of handle this part, and I want to take the time it needs, because I want you guys to be happy with the results at the end. Okay. All right, I think you guys are going to think about it. Let's move on to the next topic that I want to kind of think about today. So, what about NoCode? This idea of NoCode. Maybe you guys have heard about it lately. Is NoCode the future of game development? What do you guys think? And I mean that in no code, like there's no code, right? So think about things like, the past. So the past, we were kind of in low-level machine languages. A lot of the stuff, when I first started coding, everything was assembly language. There wasn't really, C was the best you could get, back in the day. So when I say the future of game development, I mean like there's no code, period. Like, anyone can code, anyone can develop, because there's no code. There's no syntax. There's no anything, really. It just, it's creative. There's a lot of really, good ways to get there. So what do you think? Do you guys think, in your opinion, that this would be the way? So some people say no. So you'd be, I wish, I'm like you, like most of you. I'm seeing some of the comments here, and some people are saying, well, I think that, things would be fairly restricted. But let me put a wrinkle in it now. All right, let me put a wrinkle in it. What if, your AI friend, could help you code? What if that was the case? So, example, computer, I want you to set up a scene. You're speaking. There's some voice recognition here. Okay, let's imagine it together. Computer, exactly. And then all of a sudden, the scene. Okay, what kind of scene would you like to make? I want you to make an empty scene. Computer, good. All right. I want you to change the lighting. I'm talking right now. That's how we're interacting. There's not even me interacting with the keyboard. It's just me talking, and the computer's listening. Similar to, let's say, Star Trek. When the computer's omnipresent, and I'm talking, and it's just doing exactly what I want. Right. Now, this is kind of really, really extreme, right, what I'm talking about here. But let's think about the positives and negatives here for a second. Positive for us, because we've been talking about game development, we've been talking about game engines. Positive for us is the game engine would be a black box, right? We wouldn't care about what the game engine is. Imagine that you can get the most realistic lighting. We're just imagining a system in the future, a game engine in the future that doesn't exist yet, right? Anyone, whether you're a child to an elderly person, it doesn't matter your experience level with coding. It doesn't matter your experience if you can type or not. It doesn't matter anything. Imagine even I don't have to speak. Maybe even I have a brain-computer interface that I could interact with the computer in another way. So it doesn't matter if I'm impaired in some way. I can do whatever I want to do. This is where I'm going with this, thinking, right? And imagine, like Daniel says, I want to have control over the engine. Imagine, Daniel, you do. You have control over the engine, but you have control over the engine through an intermediary. I have an ambassador that's going to talk to you, and they're going to do exactly what you tell them to do. You can go as detailed as you want with this thing, and you can go as high level as you want. Okay, I want to create a 3D experience. I want to create a 2D experience. I want to create a user interface experience. Whatever I want to create, I'm just going to do it. And so think about this, not just for non-programmers. Imagine that in the future, there are no programmers. Everybody's a programmer. Everyone's a creator. Everyone's an artist in some way. Some are more technical than others. And but you're not physically doing the coding. The coding is being done for you, right? That's what I'm talking about. Is it possible? Do you see a future like this? And what about our needs in terms of development time? right? So here's the graph that we're showing here, right? Development speed as we get closer to no code is way faster, right? Why? Because a lot of building blocks are done for you. Innovation in terms of how much we can innovate when there's no barrier to entry. Think about us not having. I like your thinking stuff. I'm going to get there in a second, but let's think about that. No barrier to entry. We can talk to the computer. No user interface that we can possibly think of. Or if you want a user interface, you can, maybe through AR, VR, a standard computer interface or whatever. And the level of abstraction is high. So a high level of abstraction. It's a black box. You have no idea what's happening on the back end. And the advantages are truly creative. You can be, let yourself go, and the system will do it all for you. Okay, on the downside, let's talk about negatives. Okay, so we're going to hit these a little bit here in a few slides. Think about the negatives too. The system's going to do it all for you. We just said that, and some people said Skynet and all this kind of stuff. What about security, right? So I'm trusting. I have to have a lot of trust, right? This is the thing that's happening here, right? Because I'm trusting that the building blocks that have been created, right, are good enough that I can go as low as I want, detailed as I want, or as high as I want, and secure enough that if I create something, that I have the ability to lock it down or open it up as I see fit with no intervention by anybody else. That's what I would like, right? But the reality is, and this is it, and we got to talk about this, that no system is 100% secure. And if somebody else has given you a system to work with, then there's a risk that the thing that you're getting to build with has holes in it from a security perspective. They're going to know what you're doing, and all that kind of stuff. So again, let's think about that for a second, right? There's positives and negatives, and one of the, I would say, the negative considerations is the security aspect, right? Because security is going to be weaker, in this particular scenario. Why? Because you're going to have these, it's going to be a service. Think about game making as a service, platform as a service. And here's the other thing. We might have a lot of garbage out there. So, and let me explain what I mean by that too. Really beautiful stuff. Some people are going to be really creative. And they're going to have some stuff out there that's like asset flip. You're going to have some stuff out there that, is not the greatest stuff. And you're going to compete with thousands upon thousands of more creators to make your own game stand out compared to everyone else. Why? Because everybody's game is going to be a black box, right? That means for you, you're going to have to spend time trying to make yours, to differentiate yourself, right, out of that soup, right? So that's going to be a challenge, a real challenge. But there's going to be some fantastic output from that as well, because more of us are going to be creating. So positives and negatives. So I'm just reading some of the comments here. Sometimes the problem with building blocks is that sometimes you want to use a block in a way it wasn't designed, and then it becomes more complicated to work around that. Yeah, we saw that. Actually, you saw that when you're in your individual assignment too, right? You've got other comments here. You still need programmers to make the system. Well, Dhruva, it's true unless the system makes the system, right? And so therefore, you wouldn't need programmers. You build the system out of the original system. It would just get better and better over time, right? So let's suppose this is a mature version, a version down the road. Let's say, I'm just going to put a date on it, 20 years from now. You might think that 20 years is not enough time, but you'd be surprised how much we can do in 20 years. 20 years from now, when VR is more mature, where AR is something that's more common, where computer systems are faster and smaller and cooler to work with, that are more portable, that are omnipresent, where access to the internet is something that everyone has as a right to do, not just a privilege, and that we don't need cell phones anymore because communication can be done with any medium from anywhere to anywhere. All right, that's what I'm talking about, and that's think about that as a potential future. It could also be someone's nightmare, but I'm just talking about just some of the positive things. Okay, you use the system to destroy the code that just makes this. You could. So Nathan says he thinks that there's some distinguished thinkers and developers will still have a leg up, knowing more about why and how their systems work. I agree with that. I do. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate for the no-code system. I'm just putting it out there. There is a very strong movement, guys and girls, out there today, right? That we're moving towards no-code. And the reason for it is because there's so much demand for developers out there right now. We can't fill the demand. That's how much demand there is. We want to create apps. We want to create experiences. And we don't have the technical skill to do it. There's just not enough out there. That's why for every one of you, if you push yourself, you can get a job in tech. It doesn't have to be in game dev, but there's enough, I would say, demand that you should be fine, right, in terms of finding something to do. All right, so let's continue a little bit, and then I wanted to generate this discussion because we got to think about why this is the case. Why is this the trend that there is a no-code kind of revolution? Well, let's first talk about where it all started. It first kind of started back several years ago. I would say good on more than 20 years ago in software engineering, with the idea of rapid application development. All right, where we want to build something quick, right? Development in the past traditionally took a while to get done, right? We had to plan, we had lots of requirements, business requirements from the client and so on. We have to go, always go back to the requirements. This is before Agile, okay? Before there was there was the need for us to produce code quicker. So rapid application development was something that came out of that. And it's almost like, hey, I've got this design, I'm going to construct something, and the idea of agile project management and agile development came out of this idea. It came from rapid application development, right? Where we made systems and tools that were pre-built for us, right? Or frameworks, the idea of frameworks when they came forward, right? And, things like, we just talked about design patterns this entire semester. Those design patterns, we're talking about the 90s. It's not that long ago, guys. I know it sounds like it's a long time ago, 20 years ago now, but it's not that long ago from a development perspective, and things have evolved, right? Things have evolved where now there's more tools, right? There's more frameworks, there's more engines. Remember back in the day, everyone had their custom engine to make their little game. And then they started figuring things out. Why am I going to reinvent the wheel? Why am I going to continue to make new things when I can just use the thing that worked before and modify it a little bit? Can no code apply to other things outside of game dev? Absolutely. Server maintenance, Linux commands. That's where no code is really pushing right now. Web design. It can be applied to any software engineering and even outside of software in general. Think about, I want to build something, and I want to do some construction. I want to build my own house, right? If I have machines to do it for me, and I can just direct the machines, I don't have to be an engineer. I don't have to be a construction person. I don't have to be an architect, right? Think about that. And if we can extrapolate that to however far you want it. If the machine is good enough, if machine intelligence is good enough to build a black box for us where we can be creative, right? Exactly, we have a real life house in Minecraft. We can do all kinds of stuff, and especially with the right tools. Imagine again, we have augmented reality heads-up displays that we can use anytime, any place, anywhere, right? Where we can use them, and they remember in our addressable space. That is something that we want. If I put a virtual block or an augmented block in, and we're dreaming now again, but if we can imagine a place where it's not filled with ads, by the way, okay? We're just talking about a way of designing stuff. And we can hold the design in a virtual space or an augmented space or XR space, whatever you want to call it. And we can turn it off and turn it on whenever we want to. And then when we want to, we can, if I go to my house and I want to build a deck, I can imagine the deck. I can put it together with the help of my system, and I'm just going to put the system out there, or whatever that is, the engine. Let's call it the engine, because this is what this course is about. And all of a sudden, within a short amount of time, I can pay for it, and it will be built, bespoke, exactly how I want it to be, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's a game engine, or if I want to build an engine, or if I want to build a game, whatever it's going to be, I can do it with a black box. That's what we're talking about. And there's a lot of that's how I want to frame it for you. So let's think about this rapid application development. This is where it all came from. Let's talk about this idea of low code. So there's a low code versus no code thing, and I want to start with low code. So think about a low code development platform. So before we get into no code, let's start with low code, right? And can you think about platforms that we have today that we have low code? And not just Unity or Unreal. Low code. Think about that for a second. Something that's common today, RPG Maker, okay. But that's like almost no code, right? Scratch. We're going to talk about Scratch today, actually. Thank you for that. Now, what about Visual Studio? Is that like low code? Right? Visual Basic. What about Visual Studio, though? Visual Studio, IDE. Is that low code? Think about it, right? C++. I'm developing in C++. Is it low code? Why am I saying that? Because, you got to think about this. Think about all the frameworks that we have access to right now out of the box, right? And I don't have to code any of that stuff, right? It is a pretty bloated text editor, but the reason why Visual Studio has evolved, think about the name, Visual Studio, how it's evolved from being a text editor. Some people love still Notepad++. They don't like Visual Studio, they don't like Microsoft, and they want to just code from scratch. No help, no code hinting, nothing, right? And, we have no visual interface whatsoever. There's, no code coloring. It's literally just from your head, and every time like that, right? So, yeah, we get a lot of help from our tools as it is, right? So think about that. Yeah, Roderick, and so have I. And you know what? What a nightmare sometimes. You forget a semicolon or whatever. And I'm not sure what the exercise is with Notepad++ anymore, right? So, and think about that, right? Like, we have so much already that we have access to. We have a lot of low code stuff all around us, and that we don't have to really do a lot with, okay? Well, we can develop stuff with low code, okay? And think about those tools. Anyone do any kind of mobile development at all? Anybody? Like, for example, with Android or with iOS or anything like that. Has anyone done any of those things? And if you have, there are some tools in there, right? There's some tools. There's some drag and drop functionality, right? So if you've actually done any kind of mobile development, you don't start from scratch, typically, right? You have some kind of label, some type of control, whatever. You drag and drop into onto a platform. And Miles, are you doing Android, or is it through iOS? Flutter. Oh, okay. So that's a cross-platform system. Yeah, but Android Studio, right? It's pretty easy. It's drag and drop, right? So think about that. Low code, right? You can get a lot of stuff done. You can create an app, a mobile app that you can put up on the App Store, either one, right? Fairly quickly with very little code. In fact, you can use Unity. Unity is one of the best ways to create an application that's kind of code once, deploy everywhere. Okay, so think about that as an example. So high code or hard code is what we're talking about, Mustafa. We wouldn't call it high code, just hard code. Hard code is what we do when we're actually coding in C++, when we're actually coding close to the machine level or closer down. Assembly would be a very low level machine language that we were using, right? But think about us, what we do right now. Typical, software engineers, and one of the things that were brought up earlier in our discussion was, hey, what about jobs? Are we going to lose all of our jobs because there's not going to be a demand anymore for native software engineers? There will be a demand. There will be. It's just that we're going to be doing different things in the future. In the future, as this no-code, low-code movement continues, right? And it will continue, guys. That's my my prognosis, if you will, with the things that I've seen over the years, right? It's going to continue. There are going to be more and more tools in Visual Studio. The machine is going to help us code, guys. It's already doing that with IntelliSense, right? IntelliSense is adding more things to your, to your coding. It's helping you code better. It's trying to help you make less mistakes, and it's even making suggestions when you're starting to type, right? Which means, let's take that further, where never mind that it's making suggestions, it's writing some of the code for you and making recommendations. Here, by the way, I think I know what you're doing. What do you think of this code? Yes or no? Approve or disapprove? And if you approve it, the code's in. It can happen. It's coming, and people are working on it. So again, think about this. Low code, you have some kind of visual interface. There's some kind of drag and drop. You can choose how you want to do it. Think about this as a scripting interface. Guys, Unity is a low code to no code environment, and so is Unreal. Unreal can be as no code as you want it, or low code, and we're going to talk about that soon as well, right? So why? Because it's a scripting interface. If you make a low level, or if you make a game engine today, let's say any one of you guys or girls want to make a game engine, right? Think about this. Do you want your designers to monkey with your code? Chances are not. And they don't want to monkey with it either. They don't want to fool with that code. So you're going to give them what? Some kind of high-level script to write in. Lua, C#, JavaScript, whatever. Make your own script up that you're going to use, right? And why? So that it will be compiled or translated into lower-level code that the engine can use. The engine parts, which is what we've been talking about all semester, the engine parts are going to stay intact. The low-level framework, the structure, the subsystems of the engine are going to remain, right? All the hard work you did to make it work with Vulkan and all the latest and greatest drivers for your hardware and everything else, all that stuff is going to remain. No one's going to mess that up. No one's going to break your build for your engine, right? They're just going to use high-level scripting, right? That's what we're doing with Unity. That's what we're doing with Unreal. And that's what AAA studios do in their engine. All right? They give access through some kind of scripting engine, a high-level subsystem that they can inject the changes that you want to make to entities, right, that you want to place into the world. Why? Because most programmers are not engine programmers. Most programmers don't have that level of skill. Okay? And most programmers aren't low-level graphics programmers. Most programmers don't have that low level of skill, right? So because of that, unless you sign up to be an engine programmer, chances are you're doing scripting, right? Which is what we've been doing this semester. And what you're doing for your GDW games, scripting. Okay, so that is low code. Let's move on. No code, right? You've got this no code platform where everything is a user interface, right? You drag and drop stuff on. There is no code. There's not even an option for code. All right? You literally just drag and stuff on, and then you maybe change a few numbers because the interface itself might allow you to change some numbers or even dial up some numbers with some kind of, user interface control, like, spinner or something like that allows you to dial up a number higher on a transform or something. And depending on what level of dragging and dropping, right? Dragging and dropping blocks that you do, and we just talked about this. You just did it with your individual assignment 2s, right? Where you kind of connected everything. You didn't code anything to make your visual effect, right? For the most part, right? Most of the things that you did was you used an engine or a subsystem. In this case, you used shader graph, chances are, with VFX graph, and you combine those two effects to create some other effect that you could use in a low-code environment, right? So right there, think about that, how far that went. That, you did a lot of stuff with no code. And some of you produce very interesting and cool effects that in previous times, let's go back 10 years, would not be possible without them being coded. Okay, so think about that. And you were we just talked about it. Some of you were very happy with what you came out with. Not just loot drops, but lightning and different things that different special effects that you came out with that only low-level graphics programmers could have handled before, right? With some kind of multiple passes that they would have to make and so on, right? So that is the effect of no code. No code allows us to be creative, but there are risks. There are risks to this kind of thing, okay? How about we compare the two? Sometimes the lines get blurry, right? Like we just kind of said that. There's some blurry lines. When do we go no code? What's the difference between no code and low code? Is it the same? Well, we can kind of differentiate like this. So no code is positives, accessible to any user. Actually, we just talked about that earlier today. Accessibility is king, right? We want everyone to participate in creativity. Everybody. We don't want to exclude anyone. More so than ever, our society should be as inclusive as possible. We want to include everyone from every walk of life, with every ability, right? Everyone is differently abled, everybody, in one way or the other. And we want to include everybody into our creativity, right? So that way we can be, the human animal can be as creative as possible. If we can think about the ideal of that. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, you have the ability to make something that can better society, that can better yourself, right? That can make you productive and, can make things better, right? That's the idea. Accessibility to everybody. And that's where the push is coming from, guys, right? I'll tell you right now. It's a model-driven a declarative approach. So I declare, that's what declarative means. I declare what I want. Computer, I want you to make a room. And that room, I want you to add in a floor with the grid. Computer, I also want you to, we can go on like this and we can dream, right? But really, that dream of a holodeck, that dream of, programmable matter that they're talking about now in the latest Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, is something that we're striving for. The ability for us to be the masters of our domain to the point where we don't have to actually code anything, where the black box, the system is doing it for us. I'm being very idealistic here, right? And yes, there are ethical issues involved. We haven't gone to that yet, but I'm going to talk about the ethical issues very soon, right? So, this declarative approach, a drag and drop, perhaps an interface, maybe in AR, where I can imagine I'm going to use my hands or maybe some kind of brain-computer interface, a BCI, to do it for me, where I don't have to have hands, just like I don't have to have, in Back to the Future, where I'm going, I don't need roads. I don't need hands in the future. I just have to think, and it's done, right, kind of thing. And I with no code whatsoever. Low code. It requires developers with some kind of knowledge still, because look, even in Unity, you still need to know C#. You still need to, to do some kind of coding, when it comes to, some kind of additional control, if you will. And even when you're doing code blocks, right, as an example, that's a language. Like, I don't know, some of you may have found the exercise for individual assignment 2 more challenging, because trying to figure out what blocks to put together is always a challenge, at least for me. I'm not sure for you, how you feel. But whenever I use any kind of node-based programming language, it's trying to figure out the nuances of how you put those blocks together. Because some blocks, they just don't go together, right? Some connections, some outputs don't go to every input, right? And we saw that, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward. So it takes a little bit of know-how. We have, a greater dependence on hard code because we want to get down lower into the app's architecture, right? So that's where low code gives us that ability. But we're still flexible, more flexible than fully coding, all right? Why? So low code is kind of that middle area, that middle ground. And I think we're going to be there, and we're already there, a lot of us, because look, we're coding in Unity, we're doing it in Unreal, we're using Visual Studio, right? We're doing a lot of stuff with low code. I think low code it's here. It's here right now, guys. We're in low code. It's a matter of time before we move to no code. And I think that's the distinction. The distinction is, how much coding are we doing? Before we get to no code, it's literally like just what Michael said. Look, Ma, no hands. We're just doing it. whatever we're doing. And I think that's a really great way of thinking about it. Let's think about visual programming languages, right? Scratch on the left. We've got Substance in the middle. We've got Unreal on the right here. And what does it do? It allows us to express ourselves visually, a visual expression, through some kind of spatial arrangement. I really love the way Wikipedia wrote this, as well as some kind of graphic symbols or icons that allow us to make those connections. So the symbols represent, the instructions. And it allows us to, it's called blueprints, Mustafa. It allows us to create stuff, right? By connecting these icons that mean something. That's what, this visual programming languages do. And by the way, I'm not sure that it's a elective anymore. But I know one of our professors, Professor Lutfus, had put together a visual programming languages course. And again, I'm not going to mention, kind of, was it good or not or whatever. But I think the idea behind the course, right, is a good idea. We should all learn how to use visual programming elements, nodes, and those kind of things. Because, guys, you just saw it this semester, right? And yeah, I know. Sorry, Michael, to bring him up, but I'm just saying that I think that there are some great things to learn here, because if you've never done node-based programming or visual programming before, then it's a real challenge to learn what to do. And every system, as you can see here, between these three that I've shared with you, is very different. It's very different. It's not the same. Yes, there are some commonalities. For example, multiply. The multiply node. We're going to see that. The decision nodes that are out there, as an example. And there's many other kind of nodes that are very similar across different node-based systems or visual programming systems. We should all learn. That should be a course that we have in our schools, and it should start as early as possible, in my opinion. So on that, what do you think about coding in schools? If we're gonna have this coding revolution, right? Do we really want to have it? I know that we have different people. The Minister of Education, I believe his name is Lecce. He was talking about how he wants to bring coding to the schools as soon as possible. He wants to bring him in there as early as grade 4. Right? And all that kind of stuff. So just as the students are learning, really just finishing multiplication and division and all kinds of stuff, we want to bring in coding. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's good for everyone to know how to do that? Do you think that it's going to model the waters? Do you think that, what is it going to do? What are your thoughts on that? So coding as low as possible. Some people say very good. Some people say I would want it to code by grade 2, right? And how about accessibility? Like, remember that in order for you to pull off coding in schools, what about the dependencies? What do we need for that to happen? Coding in schools, but not just coding for game dev, coding in general, right? What do we need? If we think about the output, let's think about a user story, right? As a student, I would like to be able to learn how to code it by grade 2 so that, I would have a really great idea of how to be creative in the future. Think about the user story that I'm putting out there for you guys, right? And what would be all the required systems in place that you would need for that user story to come out? Here's something. Roderick says that, there's a worry about oversaturating the market, though. And again, more workers than there's work. But again, this is always the continual thing about all of us. And this worry, not just by you, but by everybody, right? That we think about things like, well, what about our jobs? Are there going to be any coding jobs in the future? Guys, there's always going to be coding jobs in the future. There's always going to be jobs for us. It may not just be the way we think about jobs today. The job market, the way things are today, there's just going to be other options in the future. Think about this. You know what? Could you have thought of a time when you were growing up that we were going to have a pandemic that was going to hit us, that we were all going to be working remotely from school, from home to go to school? For me, guys, it was completely unimaginable. I couldn't believe it. It was just the stuff of science fiction when I was growing up. Okay? It was a post-apocalyptic world when we saw people with masks, where they were everywhere. But yet, here we are in COVID. And we have that, it's part of us right now. We can't imagine the stuff that can come at us, right? We can't imagine a world where, we're being replaced in some ways by a black box, a system that can code for us. It's just going to create other opportunities for us, and we should not be afraid of the future. We should embrace it. And part of it is understanding how to work in any environment across any platform, right? You don't want to think platform specific. Don't think Mac and Windows. Don't think Linux, or Mac. Don't think NoCode or LowCode or hard code. Don't think of any of those things. Just think that I'm going to use the best tools for the job that I have to do in mind. And if that means using some kind of no-code system, I'm going to be adaptable. And that is where, what we do here at the university is so important for you guys, which is making yourselves adaptable to change. Because our biggest problem as we get to be older workers is our lack of adaptability and flexibility. We are kind of set in our ways. We know what we know, and we don't want that to change. Making sure that there are jobs would be the responsibility of employers in any case, I imagine. And I think that, what about if you could make your own job with enough leeway, right? What if you could create your own market with the tools that you would have at hand? You never know. But there's some risks, and we have to talk about those risks too. We can't just dream and kind of pie in the sky or blue skies thinking right now, because that's what we're doing. I'm doing some blue sky dreaming with you guys, all in a group, right? But there's other things we have to consider as well. Defines for cross-platform code. Maybe you wouldn't have that at all, Miles. You would just kind of say, I'm programming in iOS, or the system would just know that you're programming for iOS or for Android or whatever. I want to make this for mobile. Hey, computer, I want to make a game for my smartphone or my smart device that's on my body. My button that keeps track of my heart rate. Whatever. Let's move on. So a couple things to know is that there are different kinds of VPLs. One of them is icon-based languages, right, as an example. Form-based languages and diagram-based languages. And here's an example of some basic nodes we might see in any kind of icon-based language, where we have this. And kind of the things that we've been using is kind of a mix of a diagram-based language as well as an icon-based language. All right, the things that we've seen already. So let's talk about some tools that are already out there that you've used. So if you've been part of Gavin's class, then you should have already been exposed to Substance Designer. Am I right? Did you guys do Substance Designer with Andre? Right? Some people found this really useful. Other people, I know in my day when we started learning Substance, a lot of people didn't even go to this class, right? Even though, because it wasn't required, the tutorial, right? You weren't required to make textures and so on. Some people didn't do any of this stuff. And some people embraced it. They loved it because they're visual artists, and it's also technical. Being a technical artist is something that any one of us can be, guys, especially here at the university. Any one of us can be a technical artist with the tools we've been given and the exposure that we've had, right? And it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing, right? Why? Because we can create procedural textures here with Substance Designer, right? And how is it done? With visual programming, right? So really awesome. So texture creation, shader authoring with Blender, right? So we want to make our scenes look super realistic. We want to make a simulation, right? And so we can use the node-based tools to create some kind of principle-based shader or whatever. And I want to bring this principle BSDF right into Unity. I can do that. I can create a shader as an example in Substance, right, or some kind of texture in Substance. Bring it into Blender. From Blender, I can take it into Unity, and I have this, kind of a pipeline or workflow, right? And some of the things that I've created, everything starts with a procedurally based, texture rendering engine, Substance. And as it goes through one system to the other, you can bring something in that looks completely unique. No one's done it before. It's exactly matching the requirements of your game. And guys, zero code. Zero code. We haven't coded any of this stuff so far, right? Here's an example of this, no code stuff, right? I'm dragging and dropping. I'm connecting it. Now, going back to what we said before, is there know-how required? Absolutely. And that's where the jobs are going to be. Knowing how to put this stuff together. Maybe some kind of node-based authoring tools that require a background. For example, if you've never done any kind of graphics, you wouldn't understand what some of this means, right? You wouldn't understand what a transform means. You wouldn't understand what a vector means or a float or any of that stuff if you hadn't done those things. So I think there's got to be some background. And I think if we learn programming in the future, it's just like we learn other things today. We learn physics in high school, and potentially, or we learn chemistry, or we learn calculus. But I'll ask you this question: how many people have used calculus? If you've taken calculus before, even here at the university, how many of you have used calculus in your games? The calculus, the equations, right? Once, yeah, okay. I mean, is it good to know? Hell yeah, it's good to know. And it's really good to know trig, too. Without trigonometry, you can't get on, right? But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, right, there's a lot of stuff we learn because we want to understand the background. We want to understand where things came from it, right? And we want to understand where it's going, right? So at the end of the day, you got to figure that we need, for us to be good at visual, tools and visual programming languages, we have to understand the underpinnings of what make these things work. Okay, and the other technologies that are the side technologies that how this all works too. So shader authoring again, we just use shader graph in Unity, right? Some people had some really great experiences. Some people had challenges, but you can pull off a lot with, again, drag and drop functionality and zero code, no code. All right. And let's talk about VFX graph. We did VFX graph. So a combination of VFX graph and shader graph, right? You can create a little special effect like a ripple effect. And again, zero code, no code. But you need to know how things connect. You need to know what all these things mean. And again, I would say the need for us to have a visual programming languages course in the future, or not just one, but several, right? So that we understand how to use those nodes. We become good and quick at understanding how to put nodes together, because guys, this is where things are going, all right? This is where things are going. It's not going to be how it is today, 20 years from now. We're going to have less code and more of this, right? Because of the demands. And let's take it further. Game interactions with Unreal blueprints. If you haven't had a chance to, to check out Unreal, one of the things that we're doing in our program is, slowly, the program will evolve to include Unreal. Okay, I think there's a demand to know both kind of paradigms, right? To use Unity and Unreal. And I think my view, and this is just, looking into the future, I think the future here at Ontario Tech is that we're going to use Unreal as well as Unity. I think it's going to happen. It's coming. It doesn't make sense not to use it, and I think it's going to be included in all of our courses in the higher level. I think we're going to start with Unity earlier on, and we're going to move into an Unreal area, and maybe at the end we'll do C++. I think things will switch around a lot more than things are right now, and you'll see that that's coming. And then let's talk about Bolt. Unity has a great system. I don't know if you guys have tried this out. But Unity and Bolt. Bolt was actually owned by another company. The company's still out. It's not like they've disappeared or anything, but they've sold Bolt to the people at Unity, right? So I think there's some great opportunities here that you have a chance to kind of learn how to code visually. Again, zero code here. There's no code. You can code completely in using something called Bolt. Right? And Bolt also includes other things. There's something called state machine, where you can do flow diagrams or state diagrams. And we talked about diagram-based visual programming languages, and this is one of them. This is the idea for us to make a diagram, which is what we've been doing this whole time with nodes, icons, graphics. We connect things, and we get output. And here there's an opportunity for us to do this with, with both human-based language. So when you install Bolt, and I challenge you to try and figure this out. Try a Bolt. Look up using kind of creating a Bolt project, and you can go through your package manager to install Bolt, right, as an example, and there is a platformer tutorial that you can kind of hook into with Unity, and it'll tell you the basics of how to to move a character on a 2D interface around, and you'll see that it's not that bad, and it kind of builds on the knowledge you have right now of Unity, because Unity right now uses these words: get variable, get axis, input.getAxis, that's the old input system, right? A multiply allows you to take two values, things are the same things that we're seeing right here, and it'll allow us to map behavior as part of a new component. Instead of adding a script to a game object, we add a Bolt flow diagram, and the Bolt flow diagram will control the character's behavior, or the game object's behavior. Yeah, I'm not sure. That would be really cool if you found out what that was, Eric. I'd be interested in knowing. But this is really cool, guys, and it's coming, right? It's more and more. You're going to see that there's more and more no-code kind of environments. We can't, kind of go on without these next ones. So, Game Maker, okay? A complete drag and drop environment, no code. There's no code in Game Maker. If you don't want it, you can make one complete game with Game Maker Studio 2, no code, right? Again. So this is another environment, and there's been games made with this. How about Roblox Studio? I gotta talk about Roblox Studio, because I know people that have. Hey guys, people play Roblox. There are millions of players that play Roblox today, right? All over the place. And you know what? If I didn't talk about Roblox Studio, and if you think you're too high and mighty to do Roblox, right? I'm telling you, Roblox make money. All right, that's where you make Roblox games. You can make all kinds of code, and it's a free download. There's all kinds of stuff to make, and it's literally a drag and drop environment. Kids make Roblox games. It doesn't take very much code at all, if any, right? So really low code to no code here with Roblox. Yeah, I know stuff. I'm so sorry. I'm not being a hater here either. My kids, when they do the Roblox thing, I'm like, why do you like Roblox? Why is it something you like? And at the end of the day, they're like, because it's fun, it's neat, and because anyone can make Roblox games, and there are new games coming out all the time. They're little mini games within a game. Scratch, one of the platforms that have been used to create games for Lego robots and robotics in general is Scratch. If you want to, you can access Scratch right now, right online, and it doesn't take much to do, right? So if you go up online, if you look up Scratch and you drag and drop that interface, you can start making it. There's no download required. Everything is online, and it's fantastic. The environment and the things that you can do. And it's made for kids. Guys, if kids can do this, any one of us can do it now with the things that we know. It wouldn't take long for us to learn. All right, so Scratch. We talked about Scratch earlier. And I want to end it with this one, which is CAD and Code. Tinkercad Code Blocks. That's new, right? It's fairly new. And what you can do with it is you can create your own. Let me just add that in. You can make your own CAD project and export it. So let me see if I can pull this off here. So I'll bring in my Tinkercad thing. Here's my Tinkercad that I was just putting together today. So I made this little project. Let's say, for example, I can remove this item right here, which is the bottom block. Let's remove it and play. But guys, this is completely free, right? You can spin it around and take a look at this. And from a CAD perspective, I can add stuff in. So here's my shapes. I want to add a cylinder. Let's add a cylinder shape in there. Just connect it in there. Yep. Plop it in, right? And then press play. And let's see what happens. There's a cylinder, right, guys? and we can code 3D models. Yeah, this is the great thing. And the great thing about this with Tinkercad is not just for Arduino models and so on. It's also for making 3D models, right? Which is pretty cool. You can export this. You can see it's STL. You can export it as an OBJ, right? Or whatever you want. Lots of flexibility and completely free, my friends. Completely free, right? So I think it's really, really great, the stuff that you can do. And there's zero code and zero know-how for the most part. You can do a lot of creativity. There's a lot of creativity right now for kids, and it gets you thinking logically. All right, so I think this is really awesome. But it can also be really scary. And we got to talk about, before we go, and before we stop talking about this, we got to talk about the ethics. So we talked about security as being something that is a risk, right? Because we know somebody else is building those tools for us. If we have a black box, and that black box is being built by somebody, who's building it? What code are we using? Because we don't know what code that's being used, right? We have no idea, right? About what code has been used. What systems am I connecting to? Even with Tinkercad, is AutoCAD, the people from Autodesk, are they watching me when I'm creating stuff online? How about the people from Scratch, or Roblox, or even Unity, or Unreal? The people from Epic, are they watching me? Do stuff? Are they getting statistics from me, like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram? Are they doing that kind of thing? And the other question is, do I care? Because a lot of young people, I have to say, and people that are techies, they don't care, right? They don't care if they're being watched. They don't care what's happening, and other people really care. And there's this this thing out there, and I'm going to put this from an ethics perspective. Let's put it out there, right? Do we have to build in security? Do we have to build in something out there? Do we have to get assurances from the machines that we're going to start using and start coding in? That I'm just going to change it to here so it doesn't keep animating. Are we going to get assurances by somebody? Are we getting any assurances that the stuff that we're creating is ours? That the that the ideas that we're generating, that we're going to own the intellectual property. That someone's not going to take it and run, right? Here, think of it this way. Why do AAA studios, and we're going to talk about most AAA studios that I know, right? They don't use GitHub, right? Right? What they use Perforce. And they prefer Perforce even though it's a little older, and there's other reasons, why they use it, because of locking and unlocking things. But GitHub can do a lot of that. But why not? Right? Why not use it? It's about privacy. It's about intellectual property. It's about that people are worried. Once it's out there, it's on a public server somewhere, it can be stolen, right? It can be stolen. It can be taken. It can be used. Your intellectual property, the stuff that you made, can be taken. So here's the next one. What about not just your intellectual property being stolen, right? But what about things like, your whole IDE? Right now we're using our IDEs, our Visual Studio and so on. 99% of us are using Visual Studio on our desktop or laptop systems. But what about actually writing your code in the cloud, right? So I'm actually using some kind of cloud-based IDE, right? I'm writing my code, and let's take that further. Now, I'm not even writing code. I'm using some kind of code engine, a code writing engine, like, someone like Alexa. Hey, Alexa, I want you to write this code. Hey Siri. I better not say that too loud because my stuff is going to go off, because they're listening right now, guys. They're listening, right? Hey, whatever, my digital assistant, can you, Cortana? Hey, Cortana, can you make this code for me? Open up Visual Studio, or, open up my development environment, whatever the development environment is, online, right? Because I want everything to be online. I'm using OneDrive. I'm using Google Drive. I'm doing everything that I have is using some kind of cloud-based service, right? And the risk is that what if someone steals my stuff? What if they take, the things that we've created, right? I know, Cortana. What if we take the things that we've created and they take it and they use it, right? That's the risk, right? And I'm not going to undermine that. Some people are very serious about it. That is one of the biggest risks to VPLs, and I know that people said that already in the chat. Miles, you said it. It's security. It's intellectual property. It's that kind of stuff. How can we protect our intellectual property and maintain our security without some kind of overhead? Because remember, the more secure a system is, there's security and then there's unusability, right? We have to balance between how usable a system is, how accessible it is, with how secure it is. The more security, the less usable and accessible, right? And I want you to think about it like this. If I make a vault, right? And every time I go into work, I work inside of a vault, right? I have to give my blood. They've got to take my retina scan. I've got to wear a mask when I walk into work. Oh, wait. Isn't that what's happening in some places already? It is, right? Especially in some of those places. I mean, I'm not talking about Gattaca, the movie from the 90s, where they take your blood to make sure it's you. But I'm talking about, for the most part, you have a security card, right, when you walk into a corporate building. They know where you work. Your system that you work on is not your own. They can monitor your emails right now when you walk in, right? And some people don't like that, right? They don't like, kind of being in a spot where they're constantly being watched. The corporation, the company likes it, right? Because they know that their materials, their systems are being used for their company provided equipment, let's call it what it is being used to create stuff that they've paid you to do, right? That you're not surfing the web for other nefarious purposes. We won't fill in the blanks, right? Or doing something else with your time, right? And so there's this balance. But, at the end of the day, it comes down to how secure a place is. If you're walking into a vault, right, and you have to go through 5 security levels to get in, it's going to make it so that it's cumbersome to go through, to get into the vault right now. For example, if they have to check to see if you've, it's you 5 times, is it secure? Yes. Is it realistic? For most people, no, right? Because most people don't have a need for that level of security, right? So, like I said, it can be pretty crazy, pretty intense, and pretty intrusive. Who you are, your identity, for them to know exactly who you are and your entire history so that you can come to work is pretty crazy. And what happens is, you might think when I say entire history that I'm wrong, but actually, think about it. We're talking about a no-code society where you're the creator. You're creating your own art. You're creating your own science. You're creating your own whatever. Fill in the blanks. And you have systems to do that. Maybe you have some kind of equivalent of 3D printer or matter creator, something like that in the future. And you can, instead of going out, as an example, you can create something with your creative assistant. Let's call it a creative assistant. You're going to say, computer, or name the person, Mike. Sorry, Michael. Mike, I want you to, to create this new sword that I saw yesterday in the video game that I was playing. And I want it to be real. I want you to make it out of metal. I want you to make this new gun that I saw on TV last night. Whatever. I'm saying guns and swords, but you can fill in the blanks with other kinds of things. You can ask for anything to be made, right? As an example. So there's security concerns as well. Capability in the wrong hands. I'm just going from, on the other side now from a devil's advocate perspective, right? Capability in the wrong hands can be negative, right? I'm not going to keep going down that road, guys. I don't see a future, where everything is negative. We can always look at any piece of technology and think of the negative repercussions. Drones with guns. There's things there you can look at like that, or drones that deliver food, to people that need it, right? Drones with bombs, or drones that can lift you out of trouble when you're in you're in a place that fire engines and police cars can't reach you, right? Drones that explode on contact, death drones, or drones that can, find you and lift you out of trouble and bring you home, right? We can always think of positives and negatives for every technology that's out there. But I think the greatest positive for what we've been talking about today with visual programming languages and the idea of NoCode, right, is the ability to be creative for everybody, anytime, any place, and for us all to be kind of inclusive and a creative society where we can do other jobs. We can work from home if we need to, or we can work in an environment where we can dream, right? Because really, why do we play games in the first place, right? We play games to have fun, and we play games because we can dream about being that character, and we can escape and remove some of our stress from the day-to-day that we do, right? That's why a lot of us play games. And I think we can dream about a society that anybody can make those kind of things. All right, and that's where I'm thinking. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm being serious. To me, Kennedy, this is an important thing to me. I know some people aren't. They're like, he's crazy. But I've always believed in that. I've always believed in the positives. But we also have to protect ourselves, and there's got to be that realistic aspect of things as well. So anyways, let's recap the stuff that we've talked about today before we go, because I'm going to let you guys off a little early today, like I said. Let's talk about things to remember from today. Visual programming languages or something like that. There might be questions, maybe ethics around this kind of stuff on the exam, because I'm going to include everything, a little bit of everything from what we've talked about this entire semester in the exam. We talked about, just to recap, final exam options, right, which are these two options. Option one, you take the exam, and if you don't do anything, right, you don't take action, and it'll happen this week coming up. I'm going to put out a survey. Then at the end of the day, you're writing the exam. No action required, right? If you answer the survey, and you answer the survey that you don't want to do the exam, then you're taking option two, which means you won't be expected to write the exam, right? That's the second option. By the way, and here's something I got to mention as well. What if you say, and I thought about this when I was talking just now, what if you say, I don't want to write the exam, but the exam is going to happen because I'm going to host the exam anyway, and you turn on the exam and you write it anyway, right? Well, then you wrote the exam. So I'm going to take it into account, right? Even if you said, I don't feel like writing the exam, right? You wrote the exam, you're going to get credit or not for the exam. So please don't write the exam. I know people want to do it for fun. Don't do it for fun, because someone's going to mark it. So if you're not interested in writing the exam, please select option two when the survey comes out. You need marks. You need some kind of information to answer. So like I said, early next week, my plan is for me to release at least some kind of indicator for you. I can't release all of them, but I can release an indicator of where you're at, and it'll probably be somewhere inside of your in your grades. Like if you look up in your grade, there might be something like a current grade or something like that I will post specifically for you if I can. Okay, if not, I will send you each an email. There's not that many of you. It's 35 emails or whatever it is, 38 emails. Either way, you'll know where you stand. I want you to know where you stand before you take, kind of make a decision about what you want to do. And I'm not going to feel bad either way. Whatever you decide to do, like I said to you before, it's totally up to you. I'm supportive of you, no matter what you want. And the idea behind this, because Dr. Hogue, when we were talking, he's like, so Tom, why do you want to do this anyway? It's because I know the stress that you guys are all under, that this is a special time that we're all going through with COVID, and I don't want to be one of those people that put additional pressure on you. That's not my job. My job is to try and give you a good experience and to make sure you guys take, kind of meet the learning outcomes of this course, which is what we've talked about all semester. Okay, so that is just what I want to leave you with. Any questions or concerns or anything else before I stop recording? All right, guys, I'm going to stop recording on YouTube now. And this video is already up on Canvas. So for everyone else, remember next week on the agenda that my expectation is you'll be ready to present. I will make it random when you come in. We'll use a randomizer for your presentations. Again, presentations should go through the full gamut, which means everything that you've presented next week to James, I want it all. It's not just about aligned assignments anymore. This is your presentation, your pitch presentation, to me, your final version, as well as your demo of your game, which should be feature complete next week is what I'm looking for. That's where you're going to get rated on. Okay? For part 3 of the assignment, do we still get points for visuals if we make changes? Should you do slides? For assignment 3, you should. For assignment 2, part 3, you should. Yeah. And are you talking about for your project presentation? Should you do slides? Yeah, because see, for you guys, for JamesCon, you're just going to let everyone play your games, right? I can't necessarily play your game remote. So what you're going to have to do is do a bit of a demo for me, right? So what I'm hoping is that whoever's demoing for next week can actually show me what their game is about. Go through it, play it, for a few minutes, and show me different parts of it. A good strategy for next week might be to basically, record some parts of it. So you show some basic part, do a little bit of a demo, but then also show parts that you can't possibly demo in 10 minutes because maybe it needs 10 minutes to get to that level at that point. Or have your Unity editor ready where you can jump from one level to the other to show me different levels or different parts of your game. All right? Because the idea here is you're going to get rated on your game itself plus all the subsystems and the things that I need for me to mark you for your final version. You will get marks for it. It's not going to just be a regular checkpoint next week. There'll be requirements. It'll be part of your final project. Okay? So that's coming next week. Please try and be on time next week on Friday, so we can have a productive time. There's not that many groups, and that's a great opportunity for us to get together and experience everyone else's game, but also go through the details. I think this is a great opportunity for you as an exposition to kind of talk about your code and your journey and how you created your game. I'm interested in all those kind of things, and so I'm not going to rush you next week. I'm not going to sit there and give you the red light and say, okay, your time's done. But, let's be reasonable. I mean, if there's 6 or 7 groups, we can probably pull off kind of looking at all your group's work within a few hours, no problem, by giving everyone a chance, to show off their work. My expectation is that everyone will be here next week. So all members of your team, unless there's some kind of emergency or something, should physically be here so you can give feedback to your team. I'm going to run a little survey. And the little survey that I'm going to run is going to include everyone's team names, and you're going to respond. And I'm going to give you feedback based on the survey that I'm going to run next week. Not the survey for what we're doing, but actual feedback from the little survey in terms of what's my game concept, if I was going to pitch this to make money, all that kind of stuff. So really, really cool. I'm looking for the best presentations you have. I'm also looking for you to be super hyped about the way you present, especially with James. Remember with James, guys, hint, hint, your game is the best game there ever was, better than any AAA game out there right now. That's how I want you to pitch it to him. It's an amazing game that you're super hyped to show him. Okay, that's kind of stuff. That's how you want, I believe you should do it with James, and I think you'll get really a much better mark for the stuff that you're doing. Okay? All right, anything else that you guys have a question about? I'm just going to stop the YouTube stuff right now, and I'll take some questions. All right.